Jones family members were some of the earliest American settlers in Alamo, arriving in 1851. You're living in San Jose, and I'm going to introduce you to Mary Ann Jones.
Welcome. My name is Mary Ann Jones. I was born in Tennessee in 1825. My father was a very talented farmer. He had lots of acreage, and we had a very nice life. But he got that call that said, "Go west, young man, go west." And that meant Missouri. So we packed up our wagon and we went to Missouri. After we got to Missouri, we again became farmers and we were well off and we did very well in farming. Unfortunately, my mother passed away. I was in charge of the rest of the children in the family, being the eldest, and then my father remarried. My stepmother and I did not get along very well. And I was 16, 17 years old. And next door in the big acreage, there was a very handsome looking young man. And before long, we became acquainted and we got married. We lived on his acreage and we did very well as farmers, and we had two little girls. But again, my husband got that call, "Go west, young man, go west." And that meant California or Oregon. So we joined a wagon train and we left in 1846 across the land in our wagon train with our family. And we had a very successful trip. The Indians were not a bother to us. We knew what they wanted and they knew what we wanted. And so we got along quite well. We did lose 50 head of cattle over a stream, a raging river one time, which was a big loss to us, but we traveled on. Coming up the coast, we came to a sign at Fort Hall that said, "Little food or water for the next few days," and we were going to Oregon. The rest of the trail was going to California. We went a day or two up that trail and decided that a snowflake in the air. My husband looked at me and I looked at him and he said, "Let's go to California." So we turned the wagon train around and we went back down and came across the Donner Party. They invited us to stay with them, but there were snowflakes in the air. The Donner Party was having a problem. One of their people had a very bad situation. They were off tracing him and chasing him down to bring him back. We decided that we'd better just go on. We missed the same fate as the Donner Party by 2 days. So we were very fortunate. We were coming into California, and of course it was now wintertime, and we knew friends in the Childs Ranch in Napa. So we went to their ranch. Oh, I forgot to say I was pregnant with my third child all the way across. So we were stayed there with the Childs family at the ranch for 6 months. Our daughter, little Josephine, was the first little girl born in America in 1846, 1847. And so we were having a nice time at the Childs Ranch, but it was time for us to move on. In June, we came down to go to San Jose, where we also had more family and friends. As we were coming through this valley, my husband said, "Stop the train. We're going to live here someday. This is the most beautiful place I have ever seen in my life." Well, we went on down to San Jose and we spent several years down there regrouping, trying to decide where we were going to live and what we were going to do. We ran a boarding house. We went to the gold country and we tried panning for gold, but the little girls and I were sick most of the summer. It was cold and it was wet and we didn't make much money. So we came back. By this time, we were ready to come back up to this land. In 1852, we came back up to buy 1,000 acres here in this beautiful area and settle down in our ranch. Well, we soon knew that we needed to have a post office because the only post office was Martinez and San Jose. So my husband became the postmaster, I became the postmistress, and the post office was in our house. You would come once a week to collect your mail, or you'd bring me your dime to mail your letter, but you'd stay and talk. Well, I talked, and somebody else would come and you would talk. Finally, I had to say, "Go home. I have work to do. This is my house." Well, by now we have, oh, by the way, we are upwards of 9 children now, so we need a school. So we hired a schoolmaster who also boarded with us and formed the first schools. And a few years later, of course, we needed a church. And so we got a minister, but we had no place to meet and we had no congregation. So I had all of your addresses. So I wrote you a letter and we went down by the creek and we spent 10 days in camp. And at the end of the 10 days, we had 10 families that signed up to form the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. And It was the only Protestant church in the entire county. Well, we now have our school, we have our church, and now we have our social. The Masons formed a group, and my husband joined the Masons. They were very active in helping out, not the women, but the men. So by this, the 1860s are coming along. These are political years. It was very politically unrest in, and the women's rights were being questioned. We women kept voting for things, and we kept being voted down. So the majority of the men always got their way. We came up into the 1870s or 68s where the Grange was formed and the Masons were formed. My husband then passed away in 1870. Unfortunately, I was left with three boys to raise all the things that we had on our 1,000 acres. But in the meantime, we had ups and downs with our property. We had lost it several times because of the land grant, and we were not sure who the real owners were, but we ended up getting our land back. My oldest two sons went out to work for other farmers so we would have some money, and my youngest son stayed on the ranch to help me out. The Grange was formed in 1878, and we had the Grange to join all the families in the area for the farmers' rights so that we would get together to get our crops. Well, it wasn't long before the women tried to get our women's suffrage rights at the Grange Hall, and we kept being voted down again. So, unfortunately, the women didn't get any rights until about 1911. California women really had a right to vote. I was the happiest day in my life when I was able to register as a voter, and I was 18. In 1914, I was able to vote. I was so pleased that I was able to do something that I had worked for almost all of my life. Well, I'm in my 90s now, and I'm getting rather old, and I think I'm going to have to let the rest of my young people carry on for now. I hope you'll have time to read my story someday, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Marianne Jones. Thank you.